I want to ask you, how are you and how have you been finding the last few months with the lockdown? I mean, you mentioned that you went on Desert Island Discs during the lockdown period. Has this been a good time for you to reflect on your experiences and I guess your career as well?
It's actually been a mixture of things for me, and I'd say mostly really brilliant. It's almost like lockdown gave me the sabbatical I've never had. Yeah, I've been running at 100 miles an hour for like 30 years now, so
Yes.
it's really great to be able to just stop and think and regroup. And yeah, it's been an amazing time for me, actually. How about you?
Yeah, no, it's been quite unusual because over the last 6 months, I mean, I've been on furlough, so it's been quite odd, not working. But again, it's been really nice just to have that break because, like you, over the last few years or so, it's just been constant, from school, university, and then to work. So actually, if I'm really honest, the last few months have just been really nice. I think like the last few weeks or so have just been quite unusual with the government just talking about musicians don't have a viable job and I don't know. I mean, what do you make of all of that?
It's absolutely crazy. It's insane. I mean, the creative industries are worth an untold fortune to this country. That's the first point to make. Second point to make is that I think we have probably a larger market share in music sales of larger than any other country in the world. So what anyone thinks they're doing by curtailing our music, our ability to make music and produce music and to put music out there is a nutter, is a complete nutter. It's like they've lost leave of their senses, if you ask me.
Mm-hmm. Did you know that this was what you always wanted to do, to go into the music industry?
Yeah, music's always been the medium closest to my heart. Even when I was like 5 years old and I started singing in the choir in church, yeah, it was already absolutely as clear as night follows day that music was absolutely my medium, my métier, my vehicle to express myself and to connect with the world. Yes.
Yeah. You said that you had been preparing for the documentary that you're recording with Sky Arts about Beethoven and childhood. Have you finished filming for that? And could you tell us a little bit more about how that project came about and what you're aiming to get out of this project?
So I've always had an unbelievably stormy relationship with Beethoven's music, really all my life. And it's really, really kind of like my head gets very hot. It's like a process in preparing to perform a piece of Beethoven is like a bloody battlefield of, it's like we shout at each other. It's like I become infuriated by some of the kind of strange little tics that exist in his music, the way that he so often systematically undermines your sense of form or architecture or symmetry, where he'll bring about something really strange, a bar too soon, a bar before you expect it. So it's like he's constantly throwing little landmines under your feet. So that's a really, really complex issue. And it's only recently, as I've kind of like come into recovery mode from my childhood trauma, I've started to understand that, of course, he had a very similar form of childhood trauma. He too was an abuse victim. And so then suddenly the clouds lifted and I realized that, yes, I can smell that in practically every bar he wrote, every gesture, every phrase, every harmonic. There's something which I recognize as common ground to my own. So, of course, if you're an abuse survivor and you meet another abuse survivor, it's always triggering. So I realized that every time I opened the score of Beethoven to learn it, to prepare it, I was being triggered multiple times. The irony is that in performance, I've never had less than an ecstatic performance of Beethoven, but the process of getting to that point is really hard won. So this film came about as a result of a kind of ongoing relationship which has just developed between me and my power orchestra and Sky Arts. Sky Arts, you may know, have just rebooted themselves as a free-to-view network, which is great. And part and parcel of that kind of rebooting as a free-view channel is having a good long think of what they are and what they're here to do. And they're certainly very passionate about inclusion, about creating new paradigms within which music might be expressed or experienced or explored. And that's what we're all about. So the relationship has grown and grown, and Beethoven and Me, as it's called, which is going to transmit in December this year, is the first fruit of that new relationship. We recorded the whole of the Fifth Symphony with our orchestra, and indeed we also unearthed something that's been a lifelong fascination for me. There are 8 years worth of sketches leading to the Fifth Symphony, 8 years worth of struggle, of doubt, of turmoil, of despair, then elation, breakthrough, and then crestfallenness, and so on. You look at the manuscripts and you can see how human Beethoven's process was. We tend to think of geniuses as breathing a different air. They kind of occupy a different terrain from the rest of us, that we can't really relate to them very much. Well, Beethoven, I tell you, is so human. There are times when his nib has gone through 3 pages. He's so infuriated, frustrated, devastated by what he can't quite express.
You can see the markings on the scores, can't you?
Absolutely, absolutely. And there's this, you can get little bits of DNA. You'll see a little bits of DNA on a sketch and go, oh, I don't know that, that's familiar.
Yeah.
And then it'll go off on some weird tangent because he hasn't quite worked out the way to speak. So that's really interesting. We orchestrated out a lot of those sketches so you can actually hear how the symphony might have been in an earlier iteration. So it's all been part of the process. But yes, it was a big job. We have finished filming now. It's somewhere in London in a hot edit suite being put together. And it was, a massively liberating, but also massively triggering experience for me for all the reasons I've mentioned.